What if I told you that one of the most advanced regions on Earth still hides a prehistoric rainforest? Or that an entire country had zero mosquitoes until 2026? And it gets weirder. The smallest nation on Earth exists right next to one of the most densely populated places on the planet. There's even a war where an army somehow gained a soldier instead of losing one. And somehow, a single river manages to flow through 10 different countries. So how is all of this possible in one continent? This is Europe, and these are 15 geography facts that will completely change how you see it.
Hi friend, welcome to Geopas. This is first time I am filming myself in about 6 months and I am a little excited. And if you're still watching, you don't know how grateful I am. I know you're tired, I know you're coming from school or work, but believe me, you won't regret clicking this video. I just want to say thank you, and I hope you have a happy and wonderful summer or spring. Thank you again. Let's dive in.
Europe. Not really a continent, because geographically, Europe isn't actually a continent at all. It's just the far western edge of a massive landmass known as Eurasia. So why do we treat it like something completely separate? The answer lies in its shape. Europe has one of the most irregular and fragmented coastlines on Earth, and that changes everything. It's often called the peninsula of peninsulas, because the entire continent is basically one giant peninsula made up of even smaller ones. You've got the Scandinavian peninsula stretching into the Arctic, the Iberian peninsula pushing toward the Atlantic, the Italian peninsula cutting into the Mediterranean, and the Balkan peninsula splitting into the southeast. All of these regions are partially isolated from each other, and that isolation shaped Europe in a very unusual way. Instead of one unified civilization, it became a patchwork of separate nations, cultures, and identities. But geography in Europe doesn't just shape borders. It creates places that shouldn't even exist. Europe is way smaller than you think. Despite everything it's done in world history, it's actually the second smallest continent on Earth. Only Australia is smaller. In total, Europe covers just around 10 million square kilometers. That's barely larger than a single country like the United States or Canada. And that's where things get strange, because inside this relatively small space, you have dozens of countries, each with its own language, its own culture, and centuries of history, all packed tightly together. This extreme compression changed everything. It fueled trade, it accelerated innovation, it spread ideas faster than almost anywhere else on Earth. But it also did something else. It created constant tension. And for centuries, that tension exploded into conflict. And here's the most surprising part. The idea of Europe being its own continent was never really about geography. It was a cultural concept, first defined by the ancient Greeks, not by any clear natural boundary. And once you realize that, you start to see that Europe is full of things that shouldn't be there. A rainforest in Europe? That sounds wrong. When you hear the word rainforest, you probably think of the Amazon or the Congo, not the Balkans. But hidden deep inside Bosnia and Herzegovina, there's one of the last remaining primeval forests in all of Europe, Peručica Forest. And it's something most people don't even know exists. This forest is part of Strangest National Park, and it's a rare glimpse into what Europe looked like thousands of years ago. Because primeval means something very specific. It means almost completely untouched by human activity. No large-scale logging, no major development, just nature, left alone. The result? A dense, ancient forest filled with towering beech and black pine trees, some reaching over 60 meters in height and more than 300 years old. It's also a biodiversity hotspot, home to bears, wolves, and countless plant species that have survived for centuries. And right in the middle of it all, there's a 75-meter waterfall known as Skakavats. In a continent shaped by humans for thousands of years, this place is a rare exception, a living piece of Europe's natural past. But Europe doesn't just hide ancient forests. It also hides environments that feel completely out of place. A country with no mosquitoes. Yes, that's real, and it's in Europe. Iceland. For years, this island has been one of the only places on Earth with no native mosquito population. While nearby regions like Greenland, Siberia, and even Scandinavia deal with massive swarms every summer, Iceland has remained almost completely bite-free. And no, it's not just because it's cold. The real reason is much stranger. Mosquitoes rely on stability. Their larvae need a long, consistent freeze during winter, followed by a predictable thaw to survive and mature. But Iceland doesn't behave like that. Its climate is wildly unstable. Temperatures constantly jump above and below freezing, even in the middle of winter. And that chaos breaks the mosquito life cycle before it can ever complete. On top of that, the island's water chemistry makes it even harder for them to survive. So for a long time, mosquitoes simply couldn't exist here. But now, that might be changing. Because recently, 3 mosquitoes that arrived through freight shipping have managed to survive. Which means for the first time, Iceland may no longer be completely mosquito-free. And if you think that's unusual, Europe also contains places where size itself stops making sense. Mountain Europe's most extreme place isn't above ground. It's far below it. Forget climbing mountains, because the deepest expedition in Europe goes straight down. Hidden in the Caucasus region of Georgia, inside the Arabica Massif, lies the deepest known cave on Earth, Veryovkina Cave. And this isn't just a cave, it's an inverted Everest. Explorers have mapped it to a staggering depth of 2,224 meters. To put that into perspective, you could stack 7 Eiffel Towers on top of each other and still not reach the bottom. But getting there isn't just difficult, it's brutal. This record wasn't discovered overnight. It took decades of dangerous expeditions by international teams of speleologists. Navigating flooded chambers, squeezing through impossibly tight passages, and carrying equipment deep into a place where rescue is almost impossible. This isn't just a hole in the ground, it's a vast underground system that pushes human endurance to its absolute limit. But Europe's extremes don't just go deep, sometimes they go incredibly small. A country inside another country that somehow never disappeared. High in the Apennine Mountains, completely surrounded by Italy, sits the Republic of San Marino, one of the smallest countries on Earth. But here's the unbelievable part. It's also the oldest surviving republic in the world, founded all the way back in the year 301. According to legend, by a single stonemason named Marinus, who was fleeing persecution from the Roman Empire. He and a small group escaped into the mountains and built a community on Mount Titano, a place based on freedom and independence, and somehow it never fell. Empires rose around it, empires collapsed around it, but San Marino stayed. So how is that even possible? The answer is geography. It's isolated, mountainous, easy to defend, but also not worth conquering. It had no major resources, no strategic value, which made it invisible to invading powers. And over time, it became incredibly skilled at navigating politics, even gaining protection from powerful figures like Napoleon. Today, it still exists as a fully independent microstate, a tiny country that history somehow forgot to erase. And if you think that's small, Europe also contains a place that takes tiny to another level. This country shouldn't exist, because a large part of it is literally below sea level. Welcome to the Netherlands. There's an old saying, God created the world, but the Dutch created the Netherlands. And surprisingly, that's not an exaggeration. It's a geographic fact. Around a quarter of the country lies at or below sea level, and nearly half the population lives in these low-lying areas. So how is that even possible? Because much of this land wasn't always land. It used to be water, sea, lakes, marshes. Over centuries, the Dutch reclaimed it, piece by piece. They built massive dikes to block the water, then used windmills and later steam and electric pumps to drain entire sections dry, revealing new land underneath. These areas are called polders, and they are entirely man-made. This wasn't just engineering, it was survival, a constant battle against the sea. One mistake and everything floods. And the scale of this is insane. The entire province of Flevoland is the largest artificial island in the world, almost completely reclaimed from the sea in the 20th century. This is one of the only places on Earth where humans didn't just adapt to nature, they reshaped it. But Europe isn't just about controlling nature. Sometimes, nature creates borders that divide worlds. The Leaning Tower of Pisa didn't fail later, it was doomed from the very beginning. Construction started in 1173, and almost immediately, the problem began. But here's the strange part. The warning might have been in the name itself. Pisa is believed by some to come from an ancient Greek word, meaning marshy land. And that's exactly what the builders ignored. They placed the foundation on soft, waterlogged soil made of silt and sand. A terrible combination for something meant to stand tall. By the time they reached the third level, the ground on one side had already started to compress, and the tower began to lean. So they tried to fix it by making the upper levels slightly shorter on one side. But instead of correcting the tilt, they made it worse. And over the next 800 years, that lean became its defining feature. Today, it's one of the most famous buildings in the world. But in reality, it's a perfect example of what happens when geography is ignored. And sometimes, ignoring geography doesn't just tilt buildings, it creates borders that divide entire worlds. An army went to war and came back bigger. Not from victory, not from reinforcements, but from making a friend. This actually happened in Europe, in the tiny alpine country of Liechtenstein, nestled between Switzerland and Austria. During the Austro-Prussian War of 1866, the country sent out an army of just 80 men. Their mission? Guard a mountain pass. But here's the strange part. They never saw any combat. Instead, they spent their time peacefully stationed in the mountains, even enjoying the scenery across the border. And when the war ended, they marched back home, but not as 80, as 81. They hadn't captured anyone, they hadn't recruited anyone officially. They had simply befriended an Italian man who liked them so much he decided to return with them. No battle, no casualties, just one extra soldier. And that moment perfectly captured the nature of the country, because just 2 years later, in 1868, Liechtenstein completely disbanded its army, calling it unnecessary. And ever since then, it has remained officially neutral. And while some countries avoided conflict entirely, others are defined by the way geography forced people together. This building has been under construction for over 140 years, and it's still not finished. Welcome to La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. Construction began back in 1882, designed by the legendary architect Antoni Gaudí, and somehow, it's still incomplete today. Now here's where it gets ridiculous. The Great Pyramid of Giza, one of the most iconic structures in human history, was built in just 20 to 30 years, which means this single church has already taken more than 4 times longer to build. So what's going on here? Why is it taking so long? The answer is a mix of history, money, and complexity. First, the entire project is funded by private donations. No government budget, no fixed deadline, just slow, continuous funding. Then came the Spanish Civil War, which severely disrupted construction and even destroyed many of Gaudí's original models. And finally, there's the design itself. Gaudí avoided straight lines entirely. Everything is curved, organic, unconventional, which makes it incredibly difficult to build. So instead of one generation finishing it, it has taken multiple. Craftsmen across decades, slowly bringing the vision to life. And even today, the end is still not fully certain. And while some places take centuries to build, others have existed for thousands of years, almost completely unchanged. The smallest country on Earth is inside another country, right in the middle of Rome, hidden in plain sight. Welcome to Vatican City, an independent nation that most people walk past without even realizing it. And its size? Almost unbelievable. Just 0.17 square miles. That's about 1/8 the size of Central Park in New York. And yet, it's a fully sovereign state, with a population of only around 800 people, mostly clergy, along with the famous Swiss Guards. But here's where it gets even stranger. Despite being so small, it functions like a complete country. It mints its own euros, prints its own stamps, issues its own passports, and even runs its own media and banking systems, all inside a space smaller than a city park. This is one of the clearest examples of something unusual in geography. Size doesn't always equal power, because despite its tiny footprint, the Vatican holds global influence on a massive scale. And while some places concentrate power in tiny spaces, others stretch across borders in ways that seem almost impossible. This country is smaller than a city, but more crowded than anywhere else on Earth. Welcome to Monaco. Just a short distance from Italy, on the glamorous French Riviera, this tiny microstate holds a global record, not for size, but for density, because Monaco is the most densely populated sovereign country on the planet. Nearly 40,000 people packed into just over 2 square kilometers. That's extreme. So how do you even fit that many people? You build up. Monaco isn't just dense, it's vertical. Skyscrapers, luxury apartments, all stacked along steep hillsides overlooking the Mediterranean. Every piece of land is used. Every meter matters. And the reason for this? Money. For decades, Monaco has been one of the world's most famous tax havens, with little to no income tax, attracting the ultra-wealthy from around the globe, which created something very unusual, a tiny piece of land filled with enormous wealth and constant demand. Everyone wants in, but there's almost no space left. And while Monaco shows how crowded Europe can get, there are also places where almost no one lives at all. One river crossing 10 different countries. That sounds impossible, but it's real, and it's in Europe. This is the Danube River, one of the most international rivers on Earth. While it's not the longest, no other river connects this many nations. It begins in Germany's Black Forest and then travels 2,850 kilometers, all the way to the Black Sea. But here's what makes it truly unique. Along its journey, it flows through, or forms the border of, 10 different countries: Germany, Austria, Slovakia, Hungary, Croatia, Serbia, Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova, and Ukraine. That's an entire network of nations, connected by a single river. For centuries, this river has acted as a lifeline, for trade, for migration, for culture. It even marked the northern frontier of the Roman Empire, and later became a strategic artery for both the Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires. Today, it still connects major capitals like Vienna, Bratislava, Budapest, and Belgrade, acting like a liquid highway that both unites and divides Europe at the same time. And after all of that, there's one last geographic detail about Europe that might be the strangest of all. A country with no coastline, yet surrounded by water everywhere. This is Switzerland, a landlocked country that is somehow one of the most water-rich places in Europe. Scattered across its alpine landscape are over 1,500 lakes, from massive bodies of water like Lake Geneva to tiny crystal-clear mountain lakes hidden in the Alps. And all of this comes from something ancient, the last ice age. Thousands of years ago, massive glaciers carved through these mountains, cutting deep valleys into the land. And when the ice finally retreated, those empty spaces filled with meltwater, creating the lake system that exists today. And here's what makes it even more surprising. No matter where you stand in Switzerland, you are never more than 16 kilometers away from a lake. Water is everywhere, and it defines the country. It provides some of the cleanest drinking water on Earth, generates hydroelectric power, and shapes the entire tourism industry, turning Switzerland into one of the most visually stunning landscapes in Europe. So when you look at Europe on a map, it might seem familiar, predictable, even simple. But underneath that surface, it's full of strange patterns, hidden extremes, and geography that doesn't always make sense. And once you start noticing these details, you realize something. Europe isn't just a continent, it's a collection of stories, written by geography itself. 24 official languages in one political system. That sounds chaotic, but in Europe, it actually works. This is the European Union, a unique political and economic union built on one core idea: united in diversity. And nowhere is that more visible than in its languages. The EU has 24 official and working languages, and this isn't just symbolic, it's a legal requirement. Every member state's language must be respected, which means any EU citizen can write to the European Parliament in their own language, whether that's Polish, Spanish, or Finnish, and they are entitled to receive a reply in that same language. But it goes even further. Every major law and regulation must be translated into all 24 languages to be legally valid. Think about that for a second. One system, dozens of cultures, and thousands of translations, all working together. This has created one of the largest translation and interpretation systems in the world, employing thousands of people across cities like Brussels and Luxembourg, all for one purpose: to make sure no voice gets lost and no culture gets ignored. So when you look at Europe, you're not just looking at a continent, you're looking at layers of history, culture, and geography, all compressed into one place. From invisible borders to impossible landscapes to systems that shouldn't even function, Europe constantly challenges what we think is normal. And the more you explore it, the stranger it becomes. If you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely want to check out the next one,